Hey, today I'm going to be talking to you about inequalities. Inequalities is a big fancy word for greater than, less than, or equal to. We are familiar with greater than, less than, or equal to, but we're going to be throwing two more in there, which is greater than or equal to and less than or equal to. So I've kind of made a little chart back here that's going to help us remember all the different inequalities and also how to graph them. So the first one I want to talk about is less than. If you have x is less than 1, that means whatever number is going to be put in place of x has to be less than 1. The way you graph the expression x is less than 1, I'm going to look at the number 1, and I'm going to create an open circle, and I'm going to be graphing to the left. Okay? So if I have x is less than 1, that means my circle is going to be open because it doesn't include 1. It means it's less than 1. And if it's less, I'm going to be graphing it to the left. So that means I'm going to have an open circle in the number 1, and all of this behind the number 1 is going to be shaded. I'm also going to thicken up this arrow at the end of the number line. So that tells me I can put any of these numbers in here in place of x, and it's going to be true. Those numbers are still going to be less than 1. For example, if I take negative 2 and put it in place of x, it's going to tell me that negative 2 is less than 1. Is this statement true? Absolutely. Negative 2 is less than 1, so that's why we're going to be graphing them to the left. I have an open circle here on the number 1 because the number 1 isn't included. If I write this statement, 1 is less than 1, is that true? 1 isn't less than 1. 1's equal to 1. That's why our circle is open. Okay? A few examples in the wording of x is less than 1. It'll literally say less than. It could say fewer than, and this is just a phrase. If you're under 12, you're not permitted. That means 12 isn't permitted, but under any number under 12 is. So if I had a number line, let's say this is 12, I would have an open circle on the number 12, and any number less than that number, x is less than 12, could be put in this spot. Okay, so maybe 9 is less than 12. That makes sense. Okay, so that sums up less than. All right, let's look at greater than. Greater than is going to be x is greater than 1. This is also an open circle, but this time we're graphing it to the right because our greater numbers go to the right. So if I graph x is greater than 1, I'm going to put an open circle on the number 1, and then I'm going to shade to the right. When I shade to the right, that tells me I can put any of the numbers shaded in place of x, and the statement will be true. For example, if I pick the number 2, and I write 2 is greater than 1, that's a true statement. Any number, if I pick positive infinity, and I put positive infinity is greater than 1, I know that's still a true statement. Just a little trick. If you look the way that greater than is written, it's an alligator, well, pointing this way, and that means it kind of looks like an arrow. And to me, that arrow is pointing this to the right, so I'm going to graph the way the arrow points. Okay? All right, now I want to look at less than or equal to. This is a new symbol that you guys may not be very familiar with, but if you have something that's less than or equal to, let's say x is less than or equal to the number 1. That means it's including the number 1. For example, if I graph this, I'm going to have a closed circle because it's including the number 1. So I'm going to put a closed circle on my number line, and then I'm going to shade to the left. I'm shading the way the arrow is pointing, which is that way, and that tells me that all the numbers less than 1 are included in this set. For example, if I take any number that's shaded on this number line and put it in place of x, it's going to be a true statement. Let's say negative 1. If I have negative 1 is less than or equal to 1, that's true. Negative 1 is actually less than 1. Okay? But because 1 is shaded, let's see if 1 works. 1 is less than or equal to 1. Is that true? Yeah, because 1 is equal to 1. All right? So this is going to be a closed circle, and it's going to be going to the left. A few examples of wording. It says no more than 6. It's including 6. a maximum of 12 miles per hour, which means it can go 12 miles an hour or anything less, and a maximum capacity of 50 pounds. That means it can be 50 pounds or anything less than 50 pounds. So those are just a few examples of less than or equal to. And the last thing I want to look at is greater than or equal to. It's very similar. It's the opposite of less than or equal to. If we say that x is greater than or equal to 1, that means any number that's greater than 1 or any number that's equal to 1 is included in this set. For example, when I graph this, I'm going to have a closed circle on the number 1, and I'm going to be graphing to the right because it's greater than. All my greater numbers are going to be going to the right. So I'm going to shade to the right. I'm going to thicken up my arrow at the end. And I can put any of the shaded numbers in place of x and it be a true statement. So I know if I continued this number line that 6 would be shaded. So I can write 6 is greater than or equal to 1. Is 6 greater than 1? Yes. Is it equal to 1? No, but it still fits in this set because it says greater than or equal to 1. If I put 1 in place there, it's shaded, my circle's filled in, so that means I can put a 1. Is 1 greater than or equal to 1? Absolutely. 1's equal to 1, therefore it fits in the set. So just to sum things up and to kind of make it easier to remember, if you have less than or greater than, the two inequalities that you guys are really familiar with, you're going to graph it with an open circle. Open, open. And you're also going to be shading whichever way your inequality symbol points, or arrow. So if it's greater than, it looks like this. My arrow's this way, so I'm going to be shading to the right, greater. If it's less than, it's going to look like this. So I'm going to be shading to the left, which is less. Okay? And if you have less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you're going to have a closed circle. And you're, again, going to be pointing whichever way the arrows are going. So that sums up inequalities, graphing inequalities. They're super easy. You just have to remember if it's open, closed, or which way to shade, to the left or to the right.